Kyle, you've been paying a lot of attention to Greece, and you think there's a potential for investors like yourself to make a lot of money when the Greek government changes hands, when a different government, a non-socialist government, non-radical government takes power. Greece, not so long ago, was the country that threatened the future of Europe. Has Europe stabilized, or is Europe still at risk?
I think I think we would all agree that Europe is stabilized. But we've talked offline about this kind of paradigm in which the European Monetary Union, as it sits today, was formed back in '99 and 2000, and that convergence happened. And none of the countries that became members of the EMU ceded their fiscal sovereignty to a central taxing authority. And so for a country that pretends to be a union, like Europe, they have a currency union, but they don't have a real union, right? They still make their own fiscal decisions. They make their own military decisions. They all have their own flags that they fly, and there is no central taxing authority. So in the medium to long run, my view is, and this is Macron, this is what he's doing in moving around Europe today, suggesting that we need a Eurobond and we need a central fighting force. He's saying the right things to unify Europe. And it's what Europe needs to continue to move forward as one union. And there's this interesting global chess game going on where Putin realizes that he'd rather have a destabilized Europe so that they won't be one. And so he's pushing the Syrian refugees through Turkey into Europe. And that's what I believe caused Brexit. And it's what caused Merkel's election to go as poorly as it did. The anti-immigrant kind of factions of Europe are really starting to push back because Putin's pushed 7 million immigrants into Europe. 7 million. And Europe doesn't know what to do about this.
How do you think it plays out?
I truthfully don't know if the Germans will ever cede their fiscal sovereignty to a higher power. That's the real question that you have to ask yourself. I don't know. Germany's clearly the beneficiary of the EMU.
They like it the way it is.
They run an 8% current account surplus.
They're not
they get
looking
wealthier.
For a United States of Europe.
They get wealthier by the day, right? And in these reforms that are being forced upon the deficit countries of Southern Europe, interestingly enough, there's no symmetry to the reform. Germany's not being asked to reform its massive surplus. They're just telling these massive deficit countries to reform their deficits.
No, that conversation is taking place between Macron and Merkel. And there's
is.
some optimism that Macron will be successful.
Well, I hope so.
Because the Germans need Macron to be successful in France.
Europe needs all of this to happen. So you're asking me, what is this likely to happen? I think everybody wants it, needs it to happen. The question is, will countries cede their sovereignty and their fiscal sovereignty to a higher power? And the answer is, I'm not sure. I don't know. Although it'd be better for them, the way that elections go, and we've seen some humdingers of elections here in the U.S. and in Europe. Who knows if the spinsters will be able to spin it right? Because it's a complex problem to kind of boil down to, call it the average European or the average American. It's hard to understand.
Is there a trade in it?
What's going on? Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a trade in, again, the reason we like Greece is the Catalonian referendum that did or didn't happen this last week, depending upon who you ask, is a real problem for Europe. This isn't just a Spanish problem. This is a problem for the Eurozone as in general. So they've got a fire burning in Spain. The last thing they want is another fire burning in Greece. And so I think, perversely enough, the problem in Catalonia will be a positive catalyst for the rest of Europe to kind of get their act together, because it's going to be forcing the ECB and Germany to make more difficult decisions.
And in turn to be a little bit easier, if you will, or perhaps friendlier toward Greece, because they don't want Greece to become a problem again.
That's right. We're talking about handfuls of billions of dollars. We're not talking about trillions, right? We're talking.
So if you want to express that view, you express it through Greece.
Just buy the Greek stock market, because don't pick, if you're not going to do individual company work, just have an allocation to the Greek stock market and the Greek bond market.
What about Brexit and the pound?
I think the pound is at real risk over time, because I think they're going to have to negotiate, trade agreements bilaterally with almost everyone, and the Eurozone's going to have to make they're going to have to make an example out of Great Britain, and they're going to make it really tough to engage in trade with Great Britain. So I think it's going to be hard on them.